I was trying to think of a name and then randomly just thought of Physio Fit Hollie. So I put it all together, and I think it was like I was waiting for about a week to just post the first post to let people know that I created this account. I was so scared to put myself out there. No, running is not bad for your knees. Yeah, so many people go, yeah, running gives you arthritis. You shouldn't be running. That's not true. Research shows now that it doesn't cause arthritis. Sleep is definitely a big one. I think the more sleep I get, obviously, the better I feel. So sleep is a really big factor, and I talk to a lot of clients about this because you need to be aiming for about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, ideally.
So I am Hollie. I live just outside of London, and I've been a physio for probably coming up to just over 8 years, maybe a little bit more. I'm losing count now. And I started off working in the NHS for about 5 years, then moved on to private practice within physio. And in that time, kind of specialised in running related injuries, and then now self-employed. And I love to run on the side. So I try and do that a few times a week, and also go to the gym a couple of times a week. So having like an active lifestyle is really important to me, and I really enjoy it.
I really like coming up to 8 years now, and that kind of thought process of being like, actually, how long have I done this for? Because
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, people, I guess, will know you from Instagram as well, which we'll get into. But does it feel like your life now? Like it's part of your identity, right, being a physio?
Yeah, definitely. I feel, because when I graduated from uni, I was still quite young, because I went straight into school to uni, and then I didn't really ever have like a gap year or have a break. So yeah, when I graduated, I was really quite young, and yeah, it's just part of my life now, really. And then obviously having my Instagram as well, that kind of started off as a little hobby on the side, but now I feel like it's integrated so much into my life and sharing so much of my life on the internet now.
I guess coming straight out of uni and into a profession that you've now been in for 8 years, you must have at that point, when you come out of uni and you get your first job and you start, you think, I know what I'm doing here, like I'm good. But now I bet looking back at that person, I bet the experience is totally different, and kind of where you're at in your mindset is different as well. How are they different, do you reckon?
Well, I think when you first finish uni, as a physio, you're just a bit, you're like, where am I going to go with this career? And it's kind of scary at the same time, because you're so used to being watched the whole time as a student physio, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm a physio, I've got to go and treat people by myself. And yeah, I guess my confidence probably has grown over the last 8 years. We probably started off not very confident, and then just kind of grown my confidence through the different experiences I've had working in different environments, and just being a bit more independent, really. I think that's how it's kind of changed.
Well, why physio? Like, why did you decide to do that?
So when I was younger, I've always been really sporty, and I've always run. Probably started running maybe from the age of 9, potentially, at school. I can't remember. Very young. I basically did a cross country race once. My friend was like, "Oh, do you want to do this cross country event?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then I ended up coming, I think, third, across loads of people. And I remember just finishing, and everyone was like, "You've come third," and I was like, "Oh, how did I do that?" So yeah, I've always been pretty sporty, and then because I did a lot of running, I got injured quite frequently, I guess, and saw a physio from when I was 13 years old. And then from that point at 13, I was like, I'm going to be a physio, which was quite cool. Good to know that early on, because then it allowed me to choose everything at school to help me get into physio at uni. And then, I never really looked back, to be honest. I always knew this is what I want to do.
Did your mind ever stray from that path, or was it literally this is my focus, this is what I'm going to do?
It was always, this is my focus, which is really crazy, actually. I guess I'm really lucky that I knew what I wanted to do from a young age, because I think a lot of people, they like maybe a certain subject, but they're not really sure what career they'll take. Whereas physio, I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. Chose all my GCSEs, A-levels to make sure I got into uni, and then just never looked back, to be honest. And I think, because there's lots of different career paths you could take in physio. And I even think from like a very young age, I wanted to be like what everyone thinks a sport physio is, which is musculoskeletal physio. So I've kind of always stuck to my path and like had a goal like every few years, and I feel like kind of ticked it off every couple of years, which is good. Keeps me like motivated and on track.
Yeah, and it feels like, having spoke to a couple of physios on this podcast over the years, it feels like quite a goal-orientated profession as well. Like you say, you keep looking forward to, whether those are business goals or otherwise, you kind of set those goals and execute those goals. And it's almost like the sporting background that a lot of physios have, which is incredibly goal-orientated, kind of filters into the profession as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you start uni, you kind of think physio, I was going to be sports physio. And then you're introduced to like respiratory physio, neurophysio, all these different other areas of physio, which is a bit like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had to learn it. But yeah, you can't, I think if you know from quite early on what sort of area you want to go into, that definitely kind of helped me set my goals. So I was like, my first goal, I think, was just get a job in the NHS. I wanted to always do the NHS. I did that. And then I wanted to go and work in like a big London hospital in the NHS. And then I always knew after that, I somehow wanted to go into private practice. And then after that, it was like self-employed. So it's kind of given me something to always work towards, which is good.
Where do you look to now in the future? Because, you know, you've just pretty much spelled out the last 8 years of your career. How do you look forward, and what kind of would be next in your career path?
So I kind of just want to build my brand, PhysioFit Hollie, and kind of get work harder for PhysioFit Hollie, I guess, expand my business. I've always had this vision of having like a little clinic in my garden, in my future house that hopefully I'll sometime get. I think keep working for myself and keep growing my business, basically.
When did PhysioFit Hollie, because that's the first time we've said it, like when did that first become a thing? Like, because it feels like it was, even speaking to you over email, like arranging this conversation, PhysioFit Hollie is obviously you, but you also have a life outside of PhysioFit Hollie, right? And it's kind of like when we were like working out a time we could do this, you were saying, oh, I'm on honeymoon, but then you see on Instagram, it's like all the kind of the videos you're posting to help people, it feels like almost two different people. When did that kind of side of you, I guess, first start coming out?
So it was actually in lockdown.
Yeah.
So I was still in the NHS and I got redeployed to the COVID wards. So I was just working in outpatient physio, so musculoskeletal physio. And then we always knew COVID was coming, but we didn't know how that would look for our job. Anyway, one Friday they were like, okay, you're going to have to go to all to the wards on Monday, help out COVID. And then at that point I was like, oh gosh, okay, well I can't do my normal physio and I can't really help people like I normally would. So then one day I was just sat at home. I was like, okay, I'm going to create an Instagram. It was very outside my comfort zone. I wasn't going to do it. And then I was trying to think of a name, and then randomly just thought of PhysioFit Hollie. So I put it all together, and I think it was like I was waiting for about a week to just post the first post to let people know I got it. I was so scared to put myself out there. And then it was literally then I just tried to keep posting really consistently, and that was the start of PhysioFit Hollie, I guess. And I think I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to stop it. It's not worth it. You know, I haven't got any followers. No one's really bothered. And then I've just been so consistent and just stuck with it that it's kind of turned into, I guess, my business now, which is really nice. But it was basically created just to help people in lockdown, to give people still simple tips. And then it's kind of just gone from there, really.
Have you always had that helping people side to your personality outside of work as well? Have you always been a person that helps people? Because I always see that as a kind of a trait, I guess, with physios and people working in the healthcare sector.
Yes, definitely. It's a good and a bad thing, I guess, because I feel like I'm the type of person that just overthinks everything. So if someone's if someone's in trouble, I'm always like, okay, I need to help them. Or I'm always wanting to, I guess I'm quite empathetic. Yeah. Like I really feel what people feel, and sometimes too much. And then I overthink everything and always think I have to do more, which I guess it's a quality that every physio needs, is to be empathetic. But yes, I've always had that quality, and I think that's helped me be a good physio, I guess, as well.
Does that become difficult though when like a patient is struggling and that they're, I don't know, maybe struggling more than you thought they were going to, or a program hasn't worked, or a treatment plan hasn't worked to that point? That must be quite difficult to be then like, I really wanted to help this person. It's going to take a little bit longer than I was kind of expecting.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, you sometimes most of the times you can go home and switch off as a physio. But there are times where you do like play everything over in your head and you overthink everything, and you want to help people quicker than you'd like. But obviously with injuries and rehab, it takes a long time, and it's just managing the patient's expectation from the beginning. But I definitely, I have clients that, they can't get better for X amount of reasons, and you just want to be able to help them more, but you just can't. So sometimes out of our control, and it's hard sometimes to go home and because it does replay in your mind. But yeah.
I guess
really downside, I guess.
I guess on the flip side though, you have those brilliant moments, right? You have those moments where people are getting back to full fitness, they are running times that they could only have dreamt of, or those injuries that they've had for years are clearing up. Like, what are those moments like for you?
Yeah, that's the moments that I'm like, this is why I do my job. This is why I love my job. And yeah, you have like very up and down days, I guess, within a physio clinic. Like some people that come back, they're not getting better as quick as they'd like, or something's limited their rehab. And then they're the days you're like, oh, this is just so hard. Then the other days you have people come back, they're getting better, they're really positive, they're back to running. And those days you're like, okay, this is why I do physio. So yeah.
I just want to touch on something that you said a little bit earlier on, which was the, getting deployed to the COVID wards. When that was all happening, what did that feel like? Because that's obviously very different to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and I would imagine quite scary at the time.
Yeah, it was actually. It was. I didn't really expect to. I don't think I ever expected to go to the COVID wards. It was all just very sudden, and it basically got told on Friday, so I had to go on the Monday to the COVID wards. And obviously the whole country was in lockdown, so I had to get the train to where I was working. And I remember just standing on the platform, and it was just me, I think, and like one other person on this platform, whereas normally it was just a completely rammed train. And it was crazy. It was just so strange. And then getting off at the station, it was like ghost town. And then just going in for like the first day, you're just not sure. You just didn't know what to expect. And you're working in a new environment, really sick people, having all this, you've got to wear all the COVID masks. And yeah, it was pretty, I wasn't scared for like how getting COVID, but it was just the unknown and just a complete shift in normal life, I guess. And then I think within like 3 weeks of working on the COVID wards, I got COVID. Maybe it was even less than that, but everyone was getting it, like all the people working in the hospitals, to be honest, because no one really knew the symptoms from early on. I think it was just cough and temperature, whereas my first symptom was like a really bad headache and just not feeling well. And I was working on like a COVID ward and an oncology ward, so it was kind of both, seeing both patients. And then I think I just took myself home because I was like, I don't want to give someone COVID. It was just crazy. Like, it was just such a strange experience, and no one really knew how to deal with it. But I was in a way grateful that I could still go to work and be busy, because at least got me out the flat.
It's such a weird thing to look back at now, isn't it? Like when you look back and reflect on it, it's like, we did what for how many years, and what? Like, it's weird.
Mad. Yeah, it is absolutely mad. But yeah, I didn't have a good time, but it was actually in a way quite rewarding, because I was with a team and we were helping people, and yeah, it's a strange time to look back on, but overall it was an experience that I don't really know how to explain it, but strange experience, but nice working with like a new team and working together.
And it's I've spoken to people about this before, and it's kind of a difficult thing to talk about because there was so many negatives obviously that came out at that time for so many people, and nobody's saying that wasn't the situation. But for a lot of people as well, there was a lot of change that maybe now has led to positive things in their life, whether that be, you know, focusing more on their health and fitness, or building a new business, or realizing what's important to them. That period, I think, for a lot of people was kind of like a reset. And I guess we kind of already mentioned, like, where you are now in your business probably wouldn't have happened if you didn't have that downtime.
Yeah, so true.
And it's the same with people with their running journey, right? And I'm sure this has been something that you've seen over the past, you know, 4 years, I'm sure, post-COVID, or however long it's been, is those people that in COVID did start running. And a lot of people started running to an extent that has now caused them injuries in the future, because it's like they've gone from nothing to something. That must be quite a pattern that you've seen over the past few years, I would imagine.
There was so many new injuries from COVID. Because all you could do was, I guess, go out and either run or just start something new at home from having a new bit of equipment. So yeah, that was really common in COVID, but that just happens. Most people I see, to be honest, that have a running related injury is an overuse thing. So they've gone from having a big long break, not running, and then just suddenly going back to running 5 times a week, or from never running before to then, okay, I've got to run 5 days a week to get really good and get really fast. So that's just like a really common pattern with, and I see it every day in clinic, every day.
And I think it's partly because they're like, oh, this makes me feel good. Oh, I'm going to keep doing this. Oh, like if I keep doing this, I'm going to get better. But it's almost at the start, or if you're coming back from injury, it's almost showing restraint, isn't it? Which sometimes can be the hardest thing.
I'm guilty of it, to be fair. Like sometimes if I felt really good, I'm like, okay, I can lift all this weight, and then I end up getting injured, or I end up just having a setback because you feel really good, but your body sometimes takes longer to adapt to that. And it's the same thing with running. I think with running, even though it's just an easy thing to go and do, you just leave your house, you could go nice and slow. It is still a lot of load through your muscles, tendons, joints, and way more than people think. And that's why you get a lot of injuries with running, basically. And even running, I don't know, 5K, round the block at a really slow speed, people are like, well, why does my leg really hurt? Why does my knee hurt? Like I didn't even go very fast. So if you've gone from doing not much to all of a sudden running that much, your knee is having all this load put through it and this force put through it. And it needs to build that, you need to build that capacity up, basically.
How many people have said to you over the years, but running's bad for your knees? Like, break that down for me. Like, is it?
My
is
God.
It not? Tell me.
No, running is not bad for your knees. Yep. So many people go, yeah, running is good, gives you arthritis, you shouldn't be running. That's not true. Research shows now that it doesn't cause arthritis. Most of the time when people get bad knees from running, it's like what we just spoke about. It's an overuse thing where their tendons, for example, or muscles supporting the knee or joints just haven't quite built that capacity up to deal with running. And if we do the right strength training and injury prevention exercises, your knees will be fine. And you're not going to have knee pain when running. But I hear that all the time.
I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? It's like, it's almost the first thing that comes with, oh, I've started running. Oh, but I hear running's bad for your knees. You're like, oh, well, actually, it's that must be quite frustrating for you as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of my job is actually educating people. But you have to do it in a way like very, not too patronizing. Just giving them, educating them, because there's lots of stuff out there that's just people get given the wrong information, right? So yeah, I think a lot of the time running, you just have to educate people, and once they have the right exercises, the right knowledge, they'll be fine, and then can stay injury free.
It's that educational element of what you do, and I would imagine, you probably have people coming to you saying, "Thank you for this video," or "Thank you for that piece of information," because I think sometimes just people don't know, as you say, they just put on a pair of trainers and get out the door without maybe the relevant information that they kind of need.
Yeah, exactly. And I try and make my page as simple as possible. So a lot of my posts are very simple, but it's just because if people have no knowledge of a certain type of injury or certain type of exercise to help with running, they're not going to be able to solve their issue. So I try and make my page really simple, give people simple tips to hopefully help them. And if they just take a little bit of information that will help them, then that's going to improve reducing injuries and preventing injuries.
If someone is listening to this now and, you know, they're starting to run, they're taking up their running journey, what would be those mistakes that you would say to try and avoid, and I guess the things to implement to avoid those mistakes?
So if someone's maybe never run before or had a really long period from running, I would always encourage them to start with like a slow, gradual plan. So maybe starting with couch to 5K is quite a good plan to start with, like really simple, but it just builds up your running tolerance really, really slowly. And then also sticking to that 10% rule. So every time you're running, just adding just 10% or not something increasing the distance too big too soon. And then also making sure that you have a good pair of trainers, because a lot of people might put on a 4-year-old pair of trainers that is no sponge left, not suited to their running style, and can cause issues. So yeah, just getting a good pair of trainers, maybe going to like your local running shop that does a gait analysis, or if you're working with a physio, get them to do a gait analysis for you, and then they can advise what style of trainers should be suited for your foot. And it could just be as simple as that, basically. So yeah, sticking to a gradual training plan and a good pair of shoes, and don't start off too quick.
Pulling it all the way back as well, like we say things like gait analysis, and I know for like 90% of the audience listening, they're going to know exactly what that is. But for anybody that doesn't know, what is a gait analysis? Because it sounds quite confusing. Eh?
Yeah, it does. It sounds very technical. Yeah. It's really not very technical. It's just basically a physio, a podiatrist, or someone maybe working in a running shop will look at how you're running. So gait is how we move. Okay, so we would look behind, to the side, in front of just how your hip is moving when you're running, on how you're landing, your knee, the angle of your foot. Yeah, just looking at everything really, just to basically make sure that your injury maybe doesn't get worse, or preventing injuries, and then checking to get the right shoes as well. So it's very simple, but we're just looking at how you run or walk.
It's almost like those little things, and there's so many little things that can really help prevent that big thing, isn't there? Like,
yeah, that's really subtle.
Yeah, really subtle changes, like getting that gait analysis, like doing that bit of strength training, like building up 10%. But for some reason, I don't know why it is, but inherently all of us as humans, you've already mentioned that you do it as well. I definitely do it. When we start to feel better, it's like, yeah, it's exercising that restraint again, and not going kind of hell for leather and just being like, oh, I'm fine now. This is great. Because otherwise that's going to reoccur again and again and again, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think a lot of people think if they run, the more they run, the better they're going to become. So then they go and run 5 days a week, every day. And then their body just doesn't have that time to rest and repair. And that's really important with running. Obviously, if you're a professional athlete, you built up to run that often. But for me, I only run like 3 times a week now. And I found that's like my perfect amount, just to stop any overuse injuries, to do a different type of exercise to fit in my strength training, and just to allow my body to rest and repair. Because if you're training for, let's say, a 10K or half marathon, even a marathon, you're running a lot and your body needs a long time to repair. And if you run then the following day, you're going to feel really achy and sore, and that's when injuries can start to appear.
What are those other elements outside of running that you can kind of look at to be like, let me improve this bit, which will also help me to improve my running? Is what would you say they are? Are they like sleep or cross training, or like delve into those elements?
Sleep is definitely a big one. And I've learned this kind of like, I think over the last year, I think the more sleep I get, obviously the better I feel. And it gives your body to rest and repair. So sleep is a really big factor. And I talk to a lot of clients about this, because you need to be aiming for about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, ideally. I know we don't all get that, and I don't always get that. But I also feel so much better when I'm exercising and running when I've had a good sleep, because my body's not as fatigued. So sleep is a huge one. And you can track your sleep using lots of smartwatches now, or a Whoop, which a lot of people are using, which is very interesting. So that's, something I always discuss with clients. Strength training, which is one I always bang on about on Instagram, which most people probably heard me say. But you want to try and fit in ideally 2 strength sessions a week. And I always say to clients who've never strength trained before, trying to focus on maybe doing an exercise for your hamstring, your calf, your glute, your quad, just to cover all the major muscle groups of your leg. And start off really light, and then you can gradually build that up. And then the other element I'll talk about briefly is nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't give too much advice, but I just say it's really important with running, you've got to make sure that you are fueling your body. Because if you're running and you're not eating enough after, before, during, and you're doing a lot of running, it can lead to issues, basically. And we just don't want to do that. So it's really important to actually fuel your body.
You mentioned Whoop, just as like a kind of an aside, but you said like that's like really interesting, and it does feel like there is this fundamental shift, isn't there, with people who train, for life, not train for performance, just train because it makes them feel good and that, they want to be fit and healthy. With the kind of data side of things, it feels like it's more fashionable than what it used to be, if that makes sense. Like the shift of, I don't always want to go out all the time because I am focused on this side of my being, I guess. Have you felt like that as a professional? Like, have you seen that?
Yeah, I feel like in the last year, especially the shift on social media as well, it's much more about like living a healthy lifestyle than it ever was before. And like sleep is such a big thing. Well, running's gone crazy, hasn't it, on social media? Like that, definitely, I felt like there has been a shift in that lifestyle. And lots of people have a Whoop, or I think you could track your sleep on a Garmin as well, maybe, or other smartwatches. But it's so interesting when even just like drinking alcohol, your sleep on the Whoop is crazy. Like the recovery is shocking. I'd rather not know.
Yeah. Well, I you say that, and like I've got a group of lads that I run with quite a lot up here in Chester, and over Christmas it was like almost take a photo of your sleep score and put it in there, how bad it actually is. I was like, I'm sorry lads, like I take my Garmin off if I'm drinking because I can't deal with the negativity. It's just like,
you're not with it. Like there's just no point knowing in yourself that you don't feel as good, right? But yeah, it is shocking. So I guess sleep is a very big factor in that. And if you are, let's say, if you had a bad recovery or bad night's sleep, and then you're planning on running a 20 kilometer run the next day, like there is that high risk, I guess, of injury maybe. But yeah, I've noticed a shift on social media, definitely, of like sleep being a big thing now.
I think just in general, isn't it? It's weird that it's weird but amazing that there has been kind of this shift. And I think, again, going back to COVID, I think a lot of it was in COVID that this shift kind of happened, because I think people realised kind of what was maybe important. And
it just changed, I think, a lot of people's lifestyles, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And changed a lot of people's perceptions of what they wanted to do with their free time, I think. Because it's lovely, and I'm definitely of the mind, like I definitely drink significantly less than I ever used to, like when I was a kid growing up or whatever. But I probably will always drink in some facet, not in because if I was focusing completely on health, and I do cut it out completely if I'm training for a race or whatever, but I just find, this is a personal opinion for me, there are occasional moments where I think, oh, a glass of wine might enhance this, or a pint after a long run might be nice, or whatever. But you can have that and still be hugely health conscious and kind of drift away from that more social element of it, I think, as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm actually all about balance, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I'll drink every weekend. Not like I don't go out excessively drinking and partying like I used to when I was much younger. But on a Saturday I enjoy a few glasses of wine. And actually, when I was training for the marathon, I think I drank the weekend before the marathon, like only a few glasses of wine. But I don't think it actually made. Because I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to get this crazy time. I obviously wanted a certain time, but it didn't affect it too much. So I think I'm all about balance, to be honest. And I don't think, you should cut something completely out that's very drastic to me. So yeah, I think keeping like a balanced lifestyle is still really important as well.
I've got a friend that swears by 3 pints of Guinness the night before a race.
No way.
Because he's like, mate, basically it relaxes me and it's carbs. I'm like, I feel like there is some sort of science in that, but I'm not going to be the one
that is the question.
No,
you check his Whoop score.
Takes everything off the night before, but he swears by it. He's like, I do all my best runs like the night after a few Guinnesses. I'm like, the day after a few Guinnesses, you're like, right, okay, that's fine.
Well, actually, when I've gone out for a run after a few glasses of wine, I've actually done some of my best runs. I think that's when I got my 10K PB.
What we're saying is wine at aid stations. That's what we're saying. That's what
exactly.
In terms of your running journey, though, and you kind of mentioned the marathon there, but I know it's a half marathon plan that you're kind of on at the moment and heading towards. What are those personal running goals for you in the near future?
I think I've realised after doing a marathon, half marathon's more for me, to be honest. I did really enjoy training for a marathon. It kind of kept me, held me accountable following that plan, and I did really enjoy the process. But the marathon itself, tough. It is tough. Nothing prepares you for that. And I think half marathon is just a bit more sustainable. Like you can still have fun, live your normal life, and still get the training done. Whereas the marathon training, it was just took over my life a little bit. So I think for me, the goal is I'd like to improve my half marathon time if possible. I've got a few half marathon events this year, and then just run for fun, basically. And if an opportunity came up where I could run another marathon that I wanted to, potentially I'd consider it. But at the moment, I'm not like looking for any marathons, to be honest. So I think half marathon is like my goal at the moment, and I'm really enjoying training for it again, because there was for a while after the marathon I kind of lost my love for running a little bit, kind of just took it out of me, and I was like, I'm not feeling it anymore. And then I just kept going out for random runs. And then it was this, like probably 6 weeks ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to get a plan, stick to it, try and improve my time. And then I've been really loving it again. So it's a bit of a journey running, isn't it? A bit of a roller coaster.
It's a really important message, that though, because I feel like I can really relate to that in terms of like when I first started running and I would do a race and then I'd be like, right, now I've done a race, I'm just going to not do anything for a little bit. And then you like start again and maybe you pick up an injury because you've stopped for ages, and then you do another race and you stop. And it's like, it's that thing about, and people always say, have a race to be motivated. I think that's super important, but it's also learning to build it into your lifestyle. I had a coach for the first time for the last 18 months. And I think the thing that taught me was like, just having it in your lifestyle is much more important than dipping in and out, because it then changes your perception of everything else, rather than like, I'm going to do a race now and then I'll not do it for ages
as well. And sometimes, I feel like if you just start running because you want to do a marathon and you want to get a set time, it then puts a lot of pressure on it, and then that takes the fun out of it as well. Whereas if you consistently stick to, let's say, running twice a week, it's way more enjoyable because that's just part of your routine now. And that will also go hand in hand with reducing injuries and staying consistent, etc.
And it pulls back that element of fun as well, doesn't it? And people talk about, what did you do as you were kids? You ran around and you weren't thinking about anything. You certainly weren't wearing a Whoop or a Garmin. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just running around because running's fun, but you forget about that, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm guilty of it, but I'm like, okay, what's my pace? I need to stick to this pace. I need to do this distance. And even like posting on Strava, sometimes I'm like, if I've done a really slow run, I'm like, I can't post that on Strava. It's a bit too slow. But that just takes the enjoyment out of it. And when I was younger, I never had a watch. I ran for a club and just went to training sessions, really enjoyed it, did events, races, and never tracked, I guess, anything because it wasn't as important, I guess. But it's not even important to track it now, but I think we all a bit competitive, aren't we? On social media.
It's such a weird one that, like, when I came back from my last injury, I like came off Strava for 6 weeks because I just thought, I don't really know why I did it still, but it was like, you have this feeling of, I don't want to post these 1 minute run, 1 minute walks on Strava because people are going to be judging me. And you're like, no,
So
why does it matter?
it doesn't like, yeah, exactly. I know, I've been really guilty of that in the past, but now I just don't really care. I just post any of my runs, to be honest, and I enjoy those easier runs most of the time. So, yeah.
I think let's finish with this because, you know, there will be a lot of people listening to this that, you know, do follow your page and a lot of people that also don't follow your page, and hopefully will after this. We'll put a link in the description of this episode. What is the fundamental like goal of your page? We've kind of spoken about your career and we've spoken about kind of the brand, but if people do go and follow your page, let's hear kind of like the elevator pitch, if you will, of it.
To give people simple tips to prevent and manage injury, basically, in summary. And then sprinkle a little bit of lifestyle in there as well.
Bang. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hollie.
Sweet, isn't it?